Joining me now is Chris Bernard, President and CEO of Hunger Free Oklahoma. You got your hands full.
Yes, sir.
What do you do?
So we focus on advocacy, policy, and capacity building all around how do we build a statewide system to address food insecurity. And when we look at the resources available to do that, my organization primarily focuses on the federal nutrition programs. So that includes SNAP, which some people know as food stamps, WIC, and the child nutrition programs, which is school meals, after school meals, and summer meals.
Earlier we had Allison Anthony on, who gave me this community insight report. Now, I haven't had time to ingest all of it, but I intend to. I'm having some serious problems, some serious issues here, because we have elected officials, and I'm not trying to make you sit on the political hot seat here, but we have elected officials who are responsible to the people that elected them. Now, that would tell me that they should be paying attention to the kids that are coming to school hungry.
Yes.
And it tells me that they're not. What's wrong with this picture?
So let me give credit where credit's due first.
Okay.
Oklahoma made a lot of progress in the last 7 years in prioritizing some of these programs and trying to make sure we were leveraging them. And that's through work my organization did in partnership with the state. It's through work of other partners. And there are challenges. And so when you look at these policies, they're federal and state. And what we saw in the pandemic, and part of what this report reflects, is yes, food insecurity rates went up and needs went up. And then a federal response came in. So we saw it with increased SNAP benefits. We saw it in easier access to meals for kids. We saw it in a program called Pandemic EBT that supplements family budgets to help them afford food from the meals their kids missed in the summer. And the child tax credit, Medicaid eligibility, all these things expanded. And actually what you saw during the pandemic is food insecurity rates leveled out because we had all these responses in place. And those have all ended now that the public health emergency has ended. So we have essentially taken all these resources away from families at once. And you're seeing the steepest increase in food insecurity you've seen since the 2008-2009 recession. Now, you're not wrong that there are options available. So our federal electeds saw fit to make a few of those flexibilities permanent. One is making non-congregate meals in the summer for rural communities permanent. So instead of a kid having to go to a meal site for each meal and eat in rural Oklahoma, which was the norm, right? So imagine a parent having to drive 20 miles twice a day for their kid to get a meal.
Hard to imagine.
Right, it wasn't practical. So now they can get a week's worth at once if we do this right. We also made summer EBT permanent. So they get some, if there are kids on free and reduced lunch, they get a card similar to a SNAP card that helps them afford groceries in the summer. Now what we didn't do, and one of the biggest impacts that we are now seeing, is we didn't keep meals free in schools. So it's back to if you meet poverty rates and you fill out a form, you can get a free meal, but if not, you're stuck. And we have seen huge impacts on schools and kids and families from that because one, families got used to not having to fill out that form. So some who are eligible still don't fill it out and they're building up school meal debt, which impacts not only that family, but that school. You're seeing kids forego meals because of that. And the state had an option last year in the legislature to do something different and it got held up. And they're gonna have the same option this year. There will be multiple bills to either cover meals for all kids or at least for kids who are closer to that poverty line, who've fallen off that benefit cliff.
But a child can't learn if that child's hungry.
That's 100% true. And we are not getting the maximum out of the investments we have made in education as a state over the last few years because we have not invested in making sure every kid has access to the food they need.
And people, rather than address the real problem, they're blaming the teachers.
Well, I can't speak to that, but what I will say is excuses we've heard in the legislature are things like leaders saying, well, no one's come to me and asked me
Oh,
to pay for
come
school
on,
meals.
really?
We have. We've heard.
And they do that with a straight face.
We've heard schools have the money if they want it because the legislature appropriated enough. But if you think about the way schools are prioritizing, there are different places where they have needs. And if you're trying to fill a million holes, it's kind of hard to prioritize this one over here that maybe, the federal government already covers some of, and you could use more help. But if you've got to pick between textbooks and meals as a school, you're probably going to pick textbooks.
I've got less than a minute.
Okay.
I want to point out one quick thing. The food bank is now up to 30 to 40% in an increase in foods they're giving away, and the lines are growing.
Yes.
Now, that tells me there's something bad wrong here.
There is. We have not leveraged the programs that are available to us in federal dollars our taxpayers have already paid, though we're getting better. But also we need federal response and state response combined. A solution to this kind of problem, a systemic societal problem, takes the reach and resources of government and then the innovation and ability of your private partners like us and like food banks. And currently decision makers are not prioritizing this. And that's a problem because it is a foundational issue to address everything else. Food insecurity leads to more health problems, which means more healthcare expenses. It leads to lower educational outcomes, which means our workforce suffers.
Scott, we're out of time. I'm so
That's
sorry.
okay.
Will you come back?
I will.
I'd very much appreciate it. And folks, if you want a copy of this, call 211. Tell them you want a copy of this report, or call United Way. They'll make sure you get it. And it's a viable, important report for you to have at home. Thank you again, my friend.
Thank you.
We're going to take a short break. We'll be back with Scott Kinney with Retromania right after this.